Hello, we are back with the top 4 from Nottingham Regional Championships. This happened in March 2015, just after the release of Primal Clash, which of course is going to be a silly introduction if you're listening to this right after I post it, but hopefully there's still people listening to this a little bit down the line, and that will make perfect sense. We are in the format Boundaries Crossed to Primal Clash. Now, there's already a bunch of videos from this particular tournament on my YouTube channel. All the links to the previous rounds will be in the description down below, so make sure you check them out, and I would recommend doing that before you get going on this particular video. Get yourself all up to speed. One reason, of course, we have seen both of these chaps before. On the left, we have Matthew King with his Yveltal Seismitoad Garbodor deck, and on the right, we have Tamao with his Exeggutor deck. Both very lovely people, both very good players, and Tamao running this Exeggutor deck, which a lot of people are saying isn't particularly good, is a bit of a joke deck. Now, Matthew King has already qualified for Worlds. I believe it was the points from this tournament that took him to his Worlds invite. Tamao qualified for Worlds quite a while ago, and he is going for top 22. Remember, the top 22 players in Europe and Africa. Some reason we're joined as a region. They are going through to actually having a paid invite. The rules have changed this year. So, if you think Exeggutor's a silly deck, I do just want to point out that Tamao is already a Worlds competitor. He's played there a couple of times. He's already made top 32 the year before last with Kling Klang, and he's going for top 22 in a paid invite this year. And he's chosen to play. Exeggutor while he does so. So, to be honest, if he's got a chance at top 22 and he's playing Exeggutor, that is probably going to give him a decent, it shows how much faith he has in the deck. So Matthew's playing the Yveltal Garbodor Seismitoad list, which we've seen a lot of on this particular stream. We've seen Ryan Morehouse play it a few times, and we've seen Matthew play it himself. And it was a video that I had to cut into 2 parts for technical reasons, but we actually saw those 2 chaps, Ryan and Matthew, play a really interesting mirror match with that particular deck. And I will tell you that Ryan is unfortunately in the top 4 game that isn't recorded, but Ryan is in the top 4 playing his Yveltal Seismitoad deck against a Seismitoad Slurpluff deck piloted by Alex Dow. So you're going to see one of those 2 chaps in the final against one of these 2 chaps, and I have got the final recorded. It will be up fairly shortly. So we start off, and Matthew appears to have won the flip and is going first, and he's starting Seismitoad against Tamao's Genesect. Now, the way this game is going to work is like we've seen from Tamao in the past. He needs to get set up. Now, I would not have attached that double colourless there from Matthew. And the reason very simply is, and he knows this, he knows Tamao's deck, he knows he's playing Exeggutor, and he knows how Exeggutor goes. By the time you get to top 4, you know what your opponent's playing. And Tamao's playing Crushing Hammer, and he's playing Enhanced Hammer. We see a laser there, so he is poisoned. Is he asleep? Yes, he is, but Tamao plays Virizion, so if he gets Virizion out and puts the Grass Energy on Genesect, that's going to get round it. Now, if I'm Matthew, I know, and he plays an N there, I know that Tamao's playing Enhanced Hammer, and I know that Tamao's playing Crushing Hammer, and I'm expecting that DCE to be knocked off. Now, what he really wants is a single Dark Energy on the Seismitoad, so he can attach another Dark Energy next turn and get Quaking Punching. All he's basically doing here is he's inviting Tamao to get rid of that energy, and if Tamao does get that energy, then not only is Matthew going to have to find the energy, like he would have to if he didn't attach anything this turn, but it's going to be harder because instead of having potentially 4 DCEs in his deck, assuming none are prized, he's going to have 3 DCE in his deck. So it's not just the fact that he's losing it, it's the fact that if he doesn't attach it, or if he attaches it and it gets knocked off, in both of those situations he's going to have to find a DCE next turn in order to Quaking Punch. The difference being, he's going to have to go ahead and try and find the DCE, and he's going to have 1 less in his deck. But we'll see. Maybe Tamao won't hammer it off and it'll be a moot point. But I think he'd have been better off attaching no energy there than attaching a DCE. Now, Tamao goes for his Battle Compressor first of all, and that's a very good card in his Exeggutor deck for a few reasons, one of which is Execute has the ability Propagation. It allows you to take it from your discard pile into your hand. So he can discard 3 Execute with Battle Compressor here, and then he can just put them on his bench, and it's like he's played a Pokemon Collector for those of you that played. It was a supporter which allowed you to search for 3 basic Pokemon. Yes, Battle Compressor puts them into the deck, into the discard pile, but if you combine Battle Compressor with if you combine Battle Compressor with the ability, it actually means that you get to get all 3 execute out right away. Now, the other card Tamao might want to discard with the Battle Compressor here is his Lissandra's Trump card. And the reason for that is Tamao is playing one of these decks, like a Donphan deck that I piloted recently at Yeovil Regionals. And hopefully, if I can get the footage for that, you'll see that on stream in a week or two as well. And basically, what Tamao does is he runs through his deck as fast as he can. He plays Lissandra's Trump card to get it all back, and then he goes again. Simple as that. So he needs Lissandra's Trump card in his discard pile so that he can VS Seeker for it, and because he plays 4 Random Receiver for Juniper, and what he doesn't want to do is play Random Receiver and hit a Lissandra's Trump card. Now, he's gone for the free execute here, maybe the Trump card's prize. More likely, he's just trying to get going. He's probably got a Juniper in hand. If he had a Random Receiver, then he would have wanted to go for the Trump card. There we go, and there is a Juniper. Because what he wouldn't want to do is go for the Trump card, leave the Trump card in his deck, and then Random Receiver and potentially hit it. That would have been very, very bad indeed. So we see a head ringer, and we do see the enhanced hammer, and now that Seismitoad is basically useless. It's going to take 3 energy to do Quaking Punch now, and there's no energy on it. So putting the DCE there was a mistake, as I suggested it would be. But all he's going to need to do is play a switch Seismitoad DCE, and he's going to be fine. Now, so he can Quaking Punch next turn. Now we see the second Battle Compressor, and all he's gone for is Lissandra's Trump card, which suggests that one of Tamao's 4 executes is prized, which might also explain why he went for 3 from the first Battle Compressor. He wanted to make sure he had access to all 3 of them. Now we see the Trump card in the discard pile, and he brings those 2 executes up, plays an Ultra Ball, and just discards them both again. And that's the beauty of Execute. Now, when he goes into the discard pile every time, it's counted as a new Pokemon. So what that means is you can propagate them both and then discard them both with Ultra Ball, and now they're a new Pokemon, so you're able to propagate them again. So even though propagate says once per turn, you can in effect use it infinite times. Now, Tamao has got a Skrelp on the bench, and he searched for a Dragalge with Ultra Ball. The reason he's searched with the Ultra Ball now is purely because he knows that there is a chance Matthew is going to be able to Quaking Punch next turn. Tamao's done everything he can to stop him. He's played the Head Ringer on the Seismitoad. He's got rid of the DCE with Enhanced Hammer. But as I've said, if Matthew plays he can't play a Float Stone, and he can't play a single Dark Energy to retreat, because then he wouldn't be able to play the DCE as well. But if he plays a switch Seismitoad DC, he can Quaking Punch next turn. Tamao knows this. Tamao is also playing a Random Receiver to hit that Juniper. So essentially, any trainers that Tamao could play this turn or next turn, he's playing this turn. And the reason he's playing them this turn is because he knows there's a chance he's going to end up being... he knows he's potentially going to end up being Train a lot next turn. So the Genesect wakes up. Now you notice he's also left an Execute in his discard pile there, and the reason is he needs 2 Execute on the bench. There is no way Matthew is going to get a Garbodor going this turn. He would have needed a Trubbish down last turn, and he didn't have one. So Tamao needs 2 Execute down. He needs an Execute down for a turn before he can evolve it into Exeggutor, and there is every chance Matthew is going to play something like a Lissandra, or we see he hasn't got the Quaking Punch because he's had to play just 1 Dark Energy there, so Tamao really has put him back a turn. And we plays a Chorus for 6, which is alright. That's not a bad play. Not ideally what we want from Chorus, but it's the equivalent of an N without refreshing your opponent's hand. Although we know that, Tamao's got at least that Dragalge and a Juniper, so he's going to have a decent turn. Now, Tamao needs 2 executes down because there's every chance Matthew's going to maybe Lissandra one of them and kill it or whatever, and Tamao needs to make sure he's got 2 on, at least 1 on his bench at the start of his turn to evolve into Exeggutor and get rolling. By keeping 1 execute in his discard pile, it means that next turn, if he wants to play a Computer Search, or if he wants to play an Ultra Ball or something along those lines, he's going to be able to use the execute in the discard pile. He's going to be able to use Propagate, bring it into his hand, and discard it. It's going to be very, very useful in that respect. Now, what Tamao really wants here, he just needs an Exeggutor. And there is the Computer Search, and he's doing exactly what I suggested he would. He's going for the Execute, and he's also getting rid of a Juniper, suggesting he's probably got another one in his hand. So what he's going to do here is he's going to go for, presumably, it's either going to be a Grass Energy or an Exeggutor, because they're the two things he needs. Heck, he might actually he could potentially here go for a Plasma Energy. He needs to attach an energy to Genesect to retreat it. He doesn't, I believe, play switches and the like. So if he were to play a Plasma Energy rather than a Grass Energy, he'd be able to use Genesect's Red Signal ability, bring up a benched Pokemon, and then be able to just, attack into whatever he wanted. But I like the play he's made here. He's kept the Seismitoad active. He wants to attack the Seismitoad, and he hits the Muscle Band as well. That's the last card he needs. There's the Crushing Hammer, and it's a Heads, and this is going beautifully for Tamao. And now we see the Laser, and that's a Tails. I think the only thing missing here is a Verbank City Gym. And again, we see the VS Seeker this turn because he knows there's a chance he's going to end up being trainer locked next turn. Now, if you haven't seen the previous videos, I haven't quite explained Tamao's deck yet, but like I said, there were previous videos where I explained it. Exeggutor has an attack for one energy, a colorless energy, called Blockade, and it does 10 damage. But crucially, it supporter locks your opponent. That means that Matthew is now not able to play any supporters and will continue to not be allowed to play any supporters until Tamao stops blockading. And he's playing all the hammers, as we've seen, and he's playing Laser. Now, the weakness with Seismitoad helps here, because he's actually hitting Seismitoad for 60, plus the poison. This is good. This is very good. Now, it's on 80 at the moment, because Matthew just literally passed his turn. He's got nothing. He's supporter locked. And you can see it in his face there. He knows he's lost this game. And this is what the Exeggutor deck does. What Matthew needs to do is build up an attacker to just kill the Exeggutors. Exeggutor only has 100 HP. So if Matthew's able to get an Yveltal going, or even something like Baby Yveltal and lasers, or a Mewtwo or something like that, the problem is, in order to build up attackers, Matthew needs energy, and one of the things Tamao's deck does so beautifully is deprive his opponent of energy. So it really is a race here for essentially going, is Matthew going to be able to get an attacker with energy before Tamao gets the lock up and gets rid of all of his? And Baby Yveltal helps with this. Now, there was a KO here on the Seismitoad. Tamao has now 2 prizes up. Matthew's got nothing. And, he's got a handful of supporters, actually. Now, at this stage, I think they're just about to realise that the Seismitoad wasn't actually KO'd. Now, I don't know if you caught it in the video. Feel free to go back and look at the maths. I was watching this game live at the time. I believe what happened was that the Seismitoad actually was on 170 damage, not 180. And common sense prevailed, and essentially Matthew said, well, I scoop. It doesn't matter how much energy he was on. I had nothing. I was supporter locked. I wasn't going to win the game, so I scooped. So, yeah. It really was irrelevant there. I believe there was a mistake on the maths with a Seismitoad. It got knocked out at 170, not 180. But as I've said, it really was irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. So, what we see from this matchup is it really comes down to, for Tamao with his Exeggutor, is he going to get the lockup? And it beats basically anything when you get the lockup. Your opponent can't play supporters, you're getting rid of their energy, and you've got the extra bonus that you're playing your lasers and your Verbank City Gym, and you're only doing, 10 damage a turn isn't very much. But you add in Muscle Band and Laser, and you're essentially doing 90 damage per turn. 30 from the attack, 30 at the end of your turn from poison. Your opponent does nothing on their turn, another 30 from poison. And by the time it comes around to you, you've essentially done 90 damage. You are, in effect, 2-hit KOing everything in the format. I don't believe anything is grass resistant. I could be wrong about that. So anything other than your kind of maybe Wailord and your Mega EXs. So it's a very potent deck, but it relies on setup, and that's the key here. So the problem with Tamao's deck really is he's got 100 HP stage 1 that evolves from a 30 HP basic. And he's playing one Genesect, and he's playing one Virizion, and he's not playing Switch, and he doesn't need to play that many Switch, because he plays Virizion, And all his Pokemon have essentially a retreat cost of 1. And we see a mulligan there from Tamao. What Matthew really wants to maybe try and do this game is get his Garbodor out. Now, he didn't even go for it last game, but remember, it was a very short game and he was, maybe he wasn't able to get the Trubbish out. But Tamao's got Dragalge's ability, which stops your opponent retreating if they're poisoned. And in Tamao's deck, they're basically always poisoned. And he's got Exeggutor's Propagate ability, and Genesec's Red Signal ability, and Virizian's ability, which stops your special conditions. So for any Pokemon that have a grass energy attached. So it really, we see another mulligan from Tamao. That's bad news bears. So, that would be one thing that Matthew would maybe be trying to get going here. Tamao does play, I believe he plays Startling Megaphone, and he's got a very fast deck, and, once Tamao plays a Megaphone and supporter locks you, maybe you're going to struggle to get your Garbodor out in the long run anyway, but still, it's one of those situations where it's going to help you, it's going to be useful for you in the long run. Now, Tamao's one game up, in top 4 here, the question is he going to be able to get going? And he starts with a Skrelp. Skrelp is not particularly good. I believe Tamao plays a 1/1 line of Dragalge. I could be wrong, but I believe he plays a 1/1 line. And Skrelp is there purely to evolve into Dragalge. He really doesn't want to start with Skrelp, because Skrelp is essentially rubbish. I don't mean to be mean to Skrelp. I mean, I'm sure he's got his uses, but the fact of the matter is, he's not really playing Skrelp to help here. He's not playing Skrelp to attack with. Now, Matthew appears to have nothing, but he's got his Trubbish out, and he's got a Muscle Band on him. And what's interesting here is that Trubbish has an attack for 1 energy that does 20 damage, and with a Muscle Band does 40. Skrelp is weak to Psychic and doesn't have 90 HP. That Trubbish can KO that Skrelp. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is quite worrying for Tamao. That would be a sucky way to lose. Skrelp has 50 HP. It's also got 1 attack for a Psychic energy, which doesn't help, to be honest with you. And we see Tamao's hand that it doesn't look to be a basic Pokemon in it. This is worrying here. So it looks like Matthew's passing. Tamao needs another basic, or he needs to be able to hit heads on a Crushing Hammer. He got the Crushing Hammer. Is he going to be able to hit the heads? He's not. That is bad. If he can hit heads on Crushing Hammer or get another basic, Matthew is going to win next turn. Now, Skrelp's only got a retreat cost of 1, so that Plasma Energy is going to be able to retreat it as long as Tamao gets another turn, and he hasn't, so Matthew just needs 1 energy. There it is, and Trubbish is going to pound for 80 damage and knock out the Skrelp. And that goes back to what I was saying about Tamao's deck a second ago. It's a brilliant deck when it gets set up. It can completely lock your opponent out of the game, as we saw in Game 1. But it's fragile, and we just saw that in that game, and now we're 1 game all, and I suppose we're going to see a decider there to see who actually is able to get into the final. And as we go into Game 3 here, I should just give a huge shout out and thank you again to Matt Blower and Terry Goodacre, the lovely people who sorted me out with the recording from this tournament. They recorded it, I believe they streamed it on twitch.tv at the same time, but they did record it anyway, and they've given me the files so I can commentate on them and upload. So thank you very much to them. Yeah, huge shout out to them. And while we got a minute between games here, do make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. If you have, go find a friend to subscribe, or your girlfriend, or your mum. Hopefully they're going to watch videos, but subscriber numbers make me happy. Happier if they watch the videos, but I'll take empty subscribers if that's what it takes. Don't forget to comment as well below and like it and all that good stuff. And check out my podcast as well, which you can find on my YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. So going into Game 3, we've seen 2 games here, and we've seen essentially what it's going to come down to. In Game 1, we saw Tamao get set up, and Matthew being completely unable to kind of get involved and do very much, if anything. And in Game 2, we saw Tamao lose very, very quickly when he started with a lone Skrelp and got benched on turn 2 by a Trubbish. Just so we're clear, it's not a donk if it doesn't happen on your first turn of the game. Or maybe it is nowadays, I don't know. But that's the definition I've always gone by. So last game, Tamao started with a double mulligan, and he's just mulliganed again here. Matthew, like I said, he's going to want to go for a Trubbish early on if he can. And really, Seismitoad's going to help him here. The thing about Seismitoad is, he's going to stop... Oh, there's another double mulligan from Tamao. The thing about Seismitoad is, it's going to stop Tamao being able to use Laser and Head Ringer and Enhanced Hammer and Crushing Hammer. Now, Toad is not an unwinnable matchup for Exeggutor, not by any stretch of the imagination. But what it does do is it stops Tamao doing what he's doing, not to mention the fact that, I think I've alluded to this but not actually said it so far. Tamao's supporter line here is essentially 4 Professor Juniper, 4 Random Receiver and 4 VS Seeker. The deck runs in such a way as to essentially play your hand and then play a Juniper every single turn. You want to, well, either end your turn or midway through your turn, be playing a Juniper every single time. And what that allows you to do is to play all your trainers, Juniper, and then sooner or later you're going to play Lysandra's trump card. And like I say, Tamao gets that in the discard pile as early as he can so that he can random receive without fear of hitting it, and then just VS Seeker into it. And then he can run through his deck, play Lysandra's trump card, and get going again. If Matthew's able to get a Quaking Punch off with that Seismitoad nice and early, then what that allows him to do is to, really make sure that he's not doing all of those things. Now, Baby Yveltal's a decent starter, and he can get his energy back there. He can use Oblivion Wing to, do 30 damage and get his energy back, but Tamao might hit a Crushing Hammer and then, support a lock in, and Matthew might actually be unable to draw an energy to use Oblivion Wing. Not only that, but Tamao's going to have all his lasers and stuff, and it's going to be very, very difficult. He's going to really want Seismitoad plus Garbodor to try and shut Tamao down. While Tamao's not able to use trainers, he can then build up a bunch of energy on his Pokemon and get going from there. So Tamao starts Genesect again, which is not his preferred starter, but, these things happen. I suppose if he starts with an egg, it's going to get KO'd straight away anyway. So he gets rid of 2 eggs there, and it looks like he's got rid of Lysandra's trump card again. And, we've seen him get rid of 3 eggs, and we've seen him get rid of 2 eggs and a trump card. And it comes down to various factors. Does he have an egg prized? If he's got an egg prized, he needs to get all 3 out as soon as possible. Or if he's got Lysandra's trump card prized, or, if he's got a random receiver in hand, so he wants to get rid of the trump card so he doesn't play the random receiver, etc. So he puts both the eggs down there on the bench so that he can muscle band both of them. It looks like he's probably going to play a Juniper here. And we do see the Juniper. That makes perfect sense. So here he's probably going to hit an Ultra Ball to get an egg if he wants, or he's going to be able to hit another Battle Compressor. So getting rid of 2 eggs and the trump card helps. What he didn't want to do here was discard 3 eggs with a Battle Compressor and then draw into a Random Receiver, play the Random Receiver, and hit his trump card. That would have been very, very bad. So he plays a VS Seeker, gets a Juniper, and like we talked about in the previous game, what he wants to make sure to do here is play his trainers at the earliest opportunity if he thinks there's a chance of having a Quaking Punch happen next turn. So he's got the Grass Energy, and he can play it onto the Genesect or the Execute. Now, playing it onto the Genesect there, and as we see a Laser, was the correct play, because next turn he's going to need... Oh, he's got another Grass Energy in hand, so it's kind of irrelevant. But he needs a Grass Energy on Genesect. He needs an energy on the Exeggutor, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Plasma or a Grass. And we do see the other Battle Compressor here in order to get rid of his other Executes, and that's going to really help him. Now, the reason he needs a Grass Energy on the Genesect is in order to, use Virizian's ability to turn off those lasers, make sure the poison and the sleep don't happen. What he wouldn't want to do is be in a position where he puts the Grass Energy on his Execute this turn, and then next turn be left with only a Plasma Energy and a sleeping Genesect, because a Plasma Energy would not wake up the Genesect in conjunction with Virizian's ability. Now, Tamao seems to have gone for a Battle Compressor and a Mr. Mime from that Battle Compressor, which seems to suggest he's got a couple of eggs prized, which is very, very bad. There's no reason... You never want those eggs in your deck. You don't want to draw into the eggs. You want them in your discard pile to use for Ultra Ball or Computer Search, or to just put on your bench using Propagation. Now, getting rid of the Mr. Mime and the Battle Compressor is good. He's thinning out his deck. He's getting rid of cards. Matthew has nothing here's the bench. He doesn't need Mr. Mime. Tamao's discarded all the eggs and trump card he needs, and they're the only cards he needs to have in his discard pile, except for maybe one Juniper in order to get a VS Seeker going. So really, Tamao's just thinning out his deck to make sure that he's drawing into the cards he wants to draw into and not the ones he doesn't. He wants to top deck maybe an Enhanced Hammer, Crushing Hammer, Laser, Verbank, etc. What he doesn't want to top deck here is a Battle Compressor or a Mime, and that's why he got rid of both of them. And Matthew's just played a Laser there, which hit a heads. If there was a Verbank City Gym down, given that that's the only stadium the two of them play, and there's an end from Matthew, then maybe Tamao would have wanted to use a Battle Compressor to get rid of the Verbank City Gyms in his deck, because, he's the Verbank City Gym, I believe I'm right in saying that that's all we've seen from both of these players here. So as soon as a Verbank City Gym goes down on the field, the Verbank City Gym in each player's decks, they become dead cards. Nobody seems to be playing, a Don Fan or a Growlon that discard the stadium either. So Tamao using the Battle Compressor there, it's sad that it looks like he's got a couple of Execute prize, which is very, very bad. But playing his deck very, very well and making sure that he's thinning out his deck. But you see that he didn't get too overly aggressive. He only discarded 2 cards, not 3, because at that point in the game, there aren't 3 cards in his deck he doesn't want. There are 2, so he gets rid of 2. Matthew there's playing the Ultra Ball. Now he's got the Trubbish on the bench, which we talked about before is good. He's got the Yveltal with the Energy and the Muscle Band, so he's doing 50 damage plus the Poison. And he's going to want to go here for either a Garbodor or a Seismitoad, I would imagine. Oh, that works as well, because Darkrai's got his Dark Cloak ability, which will allow the Yveltal to free retreat with that energy on him. Now, if he's got another Pokemon there which has got free retreat, which has got an energy to attach, either a Seismitoad DC or an Yveltal energy. Oh, and I don't like that so much, because he's not really... I mean, the Darkrai will help him next turn, but it doesn't really help him this turn. I would like to have seen him gone for another attacker here. He's just leaving the Yveltal there to take the energy, to take the damage. Now, that... Oh, and it looks like that Genesect is still asleep, and this is bad for Tamao. He needs to get that Virizion out straight away. That's what he needs to do. Now, he's got the energy on the Execute. As soon as if he just retreats that, and we see he's going for is that a Computer Search he's gone for? No, he's gone for a random receiver first of all, and we know he's going to hit a Juniper here. He only plays Juniper and 1 trump card, and the 1 trump card is already in his discard pile from an earlier Battle Compressor. So he hits a Juniper, as we know he's going to, and it looks like he's got a Computer Search to play, and that Computer Search, presumably, he's going to go for his Virizion here. All he needs is an Exeggutor and a Virizion, but we expect he's playing 1 Virizion for Exeggutor, so statistically he's more likely to hit an Exeggutor off of the Juniper than he is his lone Virizion, so he's going to want to Computer Search, and we know he's got a supporter in hand, so he's going to want to go for the Virizion here. That will turn off the sleep. Genesect will wake up. He can retreat with a single retreat cost and the energy already attached to him, because as soon as Virizion goes down, it will activate the ability, which will mean that any Pokemon with grass energy attached, including the active Genesect, will then be immune from special conditions. Genesect wakes up, Tamao retreats him into the hopefully Exeggutor at that stage, and he starts the supporter lock. Now, there's already 1 energy on the benched Yveltal, and that's quite bad, but it's not the end of the world. If Tamao hits a Crushing Hammer, then he's going to be doing what he did in the first game, and that's going to be useful. So the Megaphone goes down there, the Laser goes up, and it is a heads, which is useful, and he's played his entire hand and Junipered for 7. I don't know where the high 5 was then. He must have forgotten. Top 4, it's stressful. So there is the Crushing Hammer, and that's a Tails, and that sucks. Now, you'll notice there, he's got the Exeggutor. He didn't go for the Virizion from the Computer Search, which must mean that it was prized, and that is bad. Not the end of the world. He's got another Tails on sleep. Tamao needs a Heads on sleep this next turn, or else he's really in trouble. That's some fairly bad luck at this stage. The fact that, Matthew hit the heads on laser, and then Tamao hit tails, and then Tamao hit tails again, and his Virizion is prized. But it's alright, he's not going to get KO'd this turn. If he wakes up next turn, he can retreat the Genesect, and it's still not dead. Matthew will have to burn a Lysandra in order to kill it, and he won't be able to play a Lysandra, sorry, because Tamao's going to have him supporter locked. Tamao does need to start taking some prizes fairly soon here, because if he doesn't start taking prizes soon, he is going to get into trouble. Now, what Matthew needs here is he needs to get his Garbodor online. I would have loved to see him go for a Garbodor rather than a Darkrai the previous turn, because he's still not retreating that Yveltal, which means he doesn't need the Darkrai, he needs the Garbodor. In fact, actually, the previous turn, he really needed the Garbodor, because even if the Virizion had not been prized, had Matthew been able to get a Garbodor online last turn, then he would have been able to, although Tamao did actually play the Startling Megaphone, so that actually got rid of that. So ignore that last thought, but even so, I think Matthew is underplaying the importance of Garbodor here, given that Tamao is, very reliant on abilities. Or maybe Matthew knows he hasn't got a tool to play, or, he really doesn't want to, he doesn't want to put a Muscle Band, get Lysandra into the active, or excuse me, because Tamao doesn't play Lysandra, get Red Signaled into the active. Oh no, but he couldn't Red Signal. So no, I think he had a muscle, if I remember correctly, he had the Muscle Band in hand. So he really wanted to get the Garbodor in play. Even if he uses a Muscle Band to get the Garbodor active, Tamao is only playing Red Signal. So he can't Red Signal while there's a Muscle Band attached. Tamao could Megaphone the Muscle Band off, but then Matthew could just attach a Floatstone and retreat. So I do believe Matthew's made a bit of a mistake here in not going for the Garbodor as fast as he could, because Tamao's deck loves abilities. But having said that, Matthew's doing just fine. And unfortunately, Tamao still hasn't woken up. Well, he's dead now. Tamao hit, I believe he hit a couple of tails. He had a couple of turns lost there on the sleep. And to be honest, that looks like it's cost him the game. Matthew now has an Yveltal with 3 basic energy on. That means not only is Tamao going to need to, get rid of the energy, he's going to need to do it with Crushing Hammers. And this is how you beat the Exeggutor deck, and it's much easier said than done. But Tamao here is going to get the supporter lock on. But Matthew doesn't really need much here. He's got an Yveltal with 3 energy on. So he brings it up, and he's currently using Evil Ball for 120 damage, assuming that there is an energy on the Exeggutor. If Tamao plays a Crushing Hammer and gets rid of 1 energy, he is still doing Evil Ball for 100 damage, which KOs the Exeggutor. If Tamao hits 2 Crushing Hammer heads, Matthew will need to find an energy next turn to do Evil Ball. So Matthew's going to need, Tamao would need to hit 2 heads and Matthew to whiff an energy. And that doesn't look like it's on the cards. And it looks like this game is, and it seems silly to say it when Matthew's taken 2 prizes and Tamao's only taken 1, but this game seems to be over here. Tamao's deck relies on getting the supporter lock nice and early, and then just using a combination of head ringers and hammers and all of that to slow your opponent down. Now Tamao does play head ringers, but because he runs through his deck fast and uses Lysandra's trump card, we can probably fairly assume he only, and I haven't seen his list for a little while, but we can assume that he probably only plays a single, we can assume that he only probably plays a single Startling Megaphone, because he can just trump card his deck back in, and he's already played that Startling Megaphone. So he's going to need to play Lysandra's trump card and then play a Juniper and hoping to draw into it in order to get the Muscle Band off of the Yveltal, in order to put a head ringer on. And if that sounds convoluted, well, I'm sorry, but it is convoluted. And that's essentially the problem we've got here. That's the situation we're in. Matthew has an attacker ready to go. And yeah, that's how Exeggutor gets beaten. And the problem here is, if Tamao hadn't started the Genesect and was able to use Red Signal to draw the Trubbish into the active, then he can maybe draw the Trubbish into the active, get the support a lot going, hope that Matthew was unable to draw a dark energy or a float stone, which is of course asking a lot, and get going from there. You did see a cool little thing there in that Tamao has 2 Exeggutors prize, but it's not actually a big deal, because when an Exeggute gets knocked out, you can just propagate it and put it on your bench. You don't even have to search it out of your deck. So even though he's got 2 Exeggutors prized, or at least it looks suspiciously like he's got 2 Exeggutors prized, he's actually not going to have any problem streaming Exeggutors and hopefully then Exeggutors. So it's actually kind of funky in that way that he's got 2 Exeggutors prized, and if you're playing a Donphan deck and had 2 Phanpies prized, that would be a really bad thing. But here it's really not so bad. It's a nice little... I love the little tricks that this Exeggutor deck has. It's really funky to me, although it does reiterate my point that I really want to see Matthew going for the Garbodor here far more than he is. Now, okay, he's got the game kind of in hand here, but if Tamao's got 2 Exeggutors prized and Matthew goes and gets a Garbodor active, that's really going to help. And we see, oh, there's only 1 Exeggute prized. So I don't know where the 4th Exeggute is. Maybe it's in his hand, maybe it's in his deck. I don't know is the honest answer. But we do see the Virizion prize, and we see the Heads on Crushing Hammer. Do we see another Heads on Crushing Hammer? We do not. We see another Crushing Hammer. Now, if we'd seen all 3, that would have helped. Now, if Matthew's whiffed an energy here, that will help. Now, he's going to be doing, 40, 60? He's going to be doing 100 with an energy. And we do see an energy. Oh, we see a double colourless energy. Now, Tamao could play an Enhanced Hammer here, potentially, if he's got one. If he can play an Enhanced Hammer and Exeggutor, but he's had to put the Skrelp active, which shows he probably doesn't have what he needs, and it really does seem like this game is over. So in Game 1, we saw Tamao's deck do what it was supposed to do, and he came away with a win. In Game 2, we saw the low HP basics coming back to haunt him when his Skrelp was beaten on turn 2 by a Trubbish of all things. And we've seen Game 3 that, unfortunately, what happens far too often here, well, not far too often, no, that's completely unfair, but what has the potential to happen when Tamao's playing this deck is that, or when anyone's playing this deck, I should say, but what has the potential to happen here is that these Exeggutor decks, can essentially be beaten by a single attacker, which is what seems to be happening here. Now, at the Oval Regionals, and it's not a game that was recorded, unfortunately, but it's the next tournament you'll be seeing going up on my YouTube channel, you'll see me playing a Donphan deck, hopefully, and I played against an Exeggutor deck. But the thing that Donphan has is if you can get 2 Donphan set up with 1 energy, they're doing a maximum of 60 damage if they've got Muscle Band, Laser, Verbank, 10 for blockade, plus the 20 for the muscle band, plus the 30 for the poison. Donphan's got 130, so he's not being 2-hit KO'd. And unless they hit heads on sleep and then you hit tails, then, you're constantly, you're basically 2-hit KOing an Exeggutor while they're not 2-hit KOing a Donphan. So as long as you can get 2 Donphan out and keep a few energy going, you can actually be beating them. Or we see a Lysandra on the Exeggute that's got the energy and the muscle band. And Tamao here is he's gonna play the trump card next turn. You can see he's run through his entire deck. He's already played the trump card, but he's gonna need an awful lot here. So he plays the Ultra Ball. He's gonna be going for the Jirachi here so that he can get the Juniper. And what he's going to need to do here, he's going to need to hit the Exeggutor and the energy and the Enhanced Hammer. And ideally a Crushing Hammer. Now, if he can hit the Crushing Hammer and he can hit the Enhanced Hammer and the Exeggutor and the energy, and that's a lot to ask even off a Juniper, then he can get the then he can get going again. Or even something like, we can see he's got the head ringer there. If he was able to go for there's a Crushing Hammer. Is that heads or a tails? I can't see. It seems to be a tails because he hasn't discarded any energy. Even if he hit, say, a Megaphone and a head ringer there, that would have a big impact. But the reality is Matthew's got a single prize left. If he can attack next turn, he's going to win the game. No, sorry, Tamao did hit heads, but he was trying to decide what to get rid of. He went for the dark energy, and that makes sense. With 2 energy, Matthew's got the KO regardless. It's easier for Matthew to get a dark energy than it is a double colourless, and unfortunately, ladies, that is where this video is going to end. I'm going to have to apologise for this. Technical difficulties have curtailed this a second time we're recording. I'm working to go through these, and hopefully it won't happen again. But at this stage, if I try and record the same video a third time, it's not going to go very well. Now, what I was talking about there was that Tamao really needed to discard, and he made the right decision here, the dark energy, because to use either X-Ball or Y-Cyclone, Matthew would have needed a dark and a colourless energy, or a double colourless for Y-Cyclone. And as he played more dark than double colourless, it made sense to get rid of the dark and lower the odds of him getting it out. Unfortunately, it was all a moot point in the end. As we saw in that Game 3, Matthew was too far ahead, had an attacker, and Tamao, he would have needed an absurd number of cards, like your Startling Megaphone Head Ringer combo, or multiple hammers, and Matthew drawing dead from energy, which could have happened with the blockade up to supporter lock, but unfortunately for Tamao, it didn't. Matthew won this game, as we saw, and you really did only miss about a minute or two of inevitability there. So Matthew wins that game 2-1, and he heads on to the final to meet Alex Dow's Seismitoad Slurpuff deck. That video will be up online within a couple of days, so make sure you check back and watch that. And then hopefully we can start the whole process again with Yveltal Regionals and whatever other tournament streams I can get my hands on. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Check out the other videos from Nottingham Regionals if you haven't done so already. And I will be back very soon with the final from this tournament with Matthew King Seismitoad Yveltal against Alex Dow's Seismitoad Slurpuff. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely evening, or morning, or afternoon, wherever you are, and I'll be back again soon.